Readers, you're not ready for 2026. These are the fantasy, romantasy and sci-fi books we've all been waiting for. In this video, I'm going to tell you all about the new worlds, the returning favorites and the sequels we really haven't stopped thinking about. But first, I just want to say that this list is really long, so if you want it in a written form, you can instead go to my website and read about all of the books. The link is in the profile, or you can use this QR code. And the first release is The Swan's Daughter. It's a young adult novel about a prince who needs to get married to produce an heir, but he also knows that getting married equals getting murdered. His parents arranges bachelorette contests, and he has to navigate the death threats but also the chance of finding true love. Then we have the Book of Blood and Roses by Annie Summer-Lee. And in this book we get to go to a university where both vampires and humans get to attend together. We follow our main protagonist Rebecca, who is an undercover vampire hunter who is looking for the Book of Blood and Roses, which she's going to use to get clues about how you can kill vampires and get revenge of her parents' death. But then she realizes that her roommate is from one of the most powerful vampire families at all, and she's also one of the most beautiful girls she's ever seen. And then we have debut novel by Chen Tao, which is called The Poet Empress, which seems really interesting. We follow our protagonist Wei, who wants to save her family and her village from starvation and the possibility of a civil war. She offers herself to become the emperor's heir's concubine, but in order to survive, she must do the very dangerous task, becoming a woman who can write poetry and therefore produce spells, because the magic system is based on poetry in this book. This seems like a really interesting one, so keep your eyes out for this one. And then we have the book We Who Have No Gods by Leigh Sanderson. And it's about a woman whose family is secretly tied to a society of witches. And even though she has no magic herself, she's forced to attend this magical academia, and then things spiral from there. And then we have To Ride a Rising Storm, and it's about Angius, who is going home for a peaceful summer break with her family, but then outside forces arrive at her homeland for the first time, and she is forced to fight for her people. And then we have another really interesting one, which is called Queen of Faces by Petra Lord. We get to follow Annabelle, who is trapped in a male body in a world where the rich people can swap their bodies like clothes. The big problem with this body is that it's decaying and is rotting from the inside. So she tries to fix this by attending the magical school, but instead ends up with an impossible choice to either become an assassin for the magical elite or stay in her rotting body. And then we also have The Dawn of the Winter, which is the third book in the Ashen series that is coming out in February. Another exciting release is the sci-fi book The Bounce House by Matt Dinniman, and it's about this powerful Earth corporation who decides to use a colony as a test ground for a game that they're developing. Players on Earth design and use remote war machines on the colony, unaware that there are real stakes involved. And our main protagonist Oliver Lewis is trying to stop this disaster from happening. The next one is Throne of Nightmares. It's about a cursed book that pulls a prince and a book-loving librarian into a dangerous world of twisted stories, uneasy partnership that turns into something more. And then we have a new release by Ali Hazelwood, which seems really fun. It's called Two Can Play, and is about a game designer, Viola, who lands her dream project. But she's forced to collaborate with her longtime rival. A winter retreat meant for bonding as teammates forces them to be trapped together. And as the work progresses, Viola realizes that maybe enemies aren't always what they seem. And then we have a cozy one, which is called Agnes Aubert's Mystical Cat Shelter by Heather Fawcett. This takes place in the 1920s Montreal, where a cat-loving woman is trying to keep her cat shelter afloat. and has to seek help from an unlikely ally. But then we have another book-centered book which seems really interesting, which is called The Astral Library. And this is about a struggling book lover who finds a library where she can enter the stories of the books and also enter and try out new lives. But a growing threat endangers the books and the library and everything it shelters, and she must confront the forces who wants to destroy her newfound worlds. And then we have another debut novel which is called V.E Schwab, and it's a gothic fantasy novel about a girl who can see the dead, and she's forced to strike a deal to save her brother's life. The Red Winter is a fantasy novel, and it takes place in the 18th century's France, and it's about a monster hunter who is drawn into the bloody trail of a legendary beast he once helped to defeat. And then we have The Fox and the Devil, which is about a vampire hunter's daughter who is fixated with an immortal killer, which drags her into this dangerous and magical world. As the hunt deepens, a romance is starting to sparkle. The story explores obsession, desire, and the thin line between hunted and hunter. The next one is one I'm really excited about, and it seems really unique. It's called The Geomagician, and this is about a woman in the Victorian England who wants to work in a field of magic that refuses women. She wants to become a geomagician and use ancient bones to do her magic. She finds a magical egg that holds up pterodactyl and realizes that this discovery can change both her future in the science field but also the world itself. As powerful scholar seeks to claim her discovery, she is forced to use with an ex-fiancé which she doesn't know if she can trust or not. And then we have a crime novel which is co-written by Kat Clark and V.E Schwab under the name Evelyn Clark. It's called The Ending Writes Itself, and it's about a group of writers who go to an island and find their colleague killed. So this is a murder mystery, and they have 72 hours to complete the ending of their colleague's books and also resolve the case. And then we have the sequel to the popular Sheild of Sparrows, which is called Rights of the Starling, and it will be out in April. The next one seems like a really cozy romantic fantasy, and it's about a princess who is cursed by a spell and forced to stay in a bookshop. And she finds it quite nice because she doesn't want to rule, she just wants more reading time. Surrounded by books and quiet times, she really finds a life she loves, but it's threatened by suitors that her family sends that are trying to break the curse. We also have another sequel to the popular romantic book The Rose Bargain, which is called The Thorn Queen, and it will also be released in April. Another one I think seems really interesting is Thistle Marsh. In this book, fairies disappeared over a century ago, but there are still some people who believe or wish that they still could exist. When a woman who once dreamed of studying the Fae inherits a crumbling building called the Thistle Marsh Estate, she is drawn into a place where nothing is quite as it seems. She's forced to renovate this house, and as the story progresses, she realizes that maybe the Fae aren't as gone as people might believe. The next one is a book about a robot, and it's called Ode to the Half-Broken. This seems like a really beautiful but also sad read. It takes place in the world after war between humans and the machines, and it's about a robot who lives in the New York Botanical Gardens. An attack forces him back into the world that he tried to leave behind, and they set out on a journey alongside unexpected companions. The next one is Fury Bound, which is the sequel to Dire Bound by Sable Sorensen. It will be released in May, and it's jam-packed with action, romance, a bit of magic, and also bonding with the dire wolves again. The next one is a new book by Fonda Lee, and it's called The Last Contract of Isako. And it's about a famous swordswoman who is about to retire when her last client is doing so. But then she gets an offer she can't refuse. One last mission to end her last and worst apprentice, who has now made it to the top. During her missions, she discovers corporate espionage, dark secrets, and something that could change humanity's existence forever. The next one is the sequel to this book, and it's called The Ballad of Falling Dragons by Sarah A. Parker. Sarah wrote on her Instagram that this one was a whisper, but The Ballad of Falling Dragons is fire. The next one is a sci-fi book which is called The Jellyfish Problem. A marine biologist is summoned to an island outside Maine where she faces a huge jellyfish which is threatening the local community. In this book, we explored the classic sea monster setting, but also human connection and the unknown. If you read Metal Slinger and couldn't wait for the next one in the series, I'm happy to tell you that Light Wielder will be released in June. Then we have The Radiant Star, which is a sci-fi standalone, but as I've understood it, it's part of an interconnected universe. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. But it's set in the world of the Imperial Raj, when a final concession is made to allow one person to become a so-called living saint. It shocks the whole community. And this is a story about political beliefs and survival at the edges of the Empire. If you like these books by Leigh Bardugo, I can tell you that you will be happy by a release that's coming this summer. It's another Six of Crows novel and it's called Letters from Ketterdam. It's about a mysterious sea captain called the Wraith who is attacking slave handlers and shady merchants in Ketterdam. At the same time, a massacre has happened on an island nearby and the Wraith and the famous crime boss Casbreaker has to work together to solve the mystery. We also have another release in the Red Rising Saga by Pierce Brown, but no covers out yet. It's the 7th book and it's called Red God. Another really anticipated sequel is The Knave and the Moon by Rachel Gilling. It's the 2nd book after The Knight and the Moth, and I know a lot of fans will be really happy to hear that we can read it this summer. During next year, Leigh Bardugo will also release the 3rd book in the Alex Stern series called Deadbeat. V.E Schwab is also releasing another book and it's the 3rd book in the Villains series. It's called Victorious and it's expected to be released in October. Another book is Holy Monsters by Imani Eriu and it will be the 3rd book in the popular Heavenly Body series. Another book that doesn't have a name or a cover yet but is planned to be released next year is the 3rd book in the Fae and Alchemy series by Callie Hart. The 1st book Quicksilver has been out for a while and Brimstone was recently released, but the 3rd one is planned to come sometime during next year. At the event Dragonsteel Nexus 2025, Brandon Sanderson announced that he is releasing another Cosmere novel at the end of 2026. We get to follow the character Hoyd, who you might be familiar with if you've read the Cosmere, and it's about his backstory. It's the first of 4 novellas and we don't have a release date for it yet. The very popular Raven Scholar is also getting a sequel during next year, but we don't have a date yet. It's called Fox in Winter, and if you haven't read this one yet, I think you should go ahead and pick it up so you are ready for when the next one releases. Which one of these books are you most excited about? Tell me about it in the comments. And if you want to keep getting updates about potentially pushed dates and newer titles that are released, you can just go and check out my website. If you want to have more book news, you can also check out this video.